Using R is quite simple, and you've seen this already in the previous two videos. But just to give you a better idea of a standard type of workflow when you're using R, we're going to go through it. So here I have a blank script window open, and I have my console again on the right, my history below my script window, and then my files, packages, help underneath the console. So generally working in R, you want to start in your script window with things, and you can always make comments, create a vector. So create a vector, and then here I want to go ahead and create a vector. So I'm going to say x, for example, for my vector is equal to the concatenation function of just some numbers. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers in there. I'll go to 10. So I have 10 numbers now in X. And then I can run that, Control Enter, to see what happens. This warning, you won't get that warning. That's just specific to mine. So there's nothing to worry about at this point for you. Now I have now X is there, so I have X in my script window, so it's part of my script. And I might want to have Y, but I just want Y to have 10 random numbers. So I'll say run if 10, and I'll run that with a Control Enter. And I can see what Y looks like when I go like that. So Y is just a bunch of random numbers. So I have X and Y, and then maybe I want to plot them. So I want to say plot X, plot parentheses X comma Y. So plot is a function that takes in many types of R objects. Here we have the X object and the Y object, and we're just going to plot them. And it says the X and Y lengths differ. So why do they differ? Well, let's check the lengths of each. And for this one-off thing, when I just want to check the lengths, I don't want it to be part of my script, I'll just do that right over here in the console. I'll just say length of X is 9, and length of Y is 10. So it can't plot them together because they both have different lengths. So instead of 10 numbers for run if, I'll leave it 10 because it's nice. I'll just add another number up here for X. There we go. And now I'll just select all those and I'll run them all at once. And there I get a plot. So now I have a plot, and I have my X and Y variables here. I might want to do other things. Let's say I want to get the average, or I want to standardize, normalize the X data so that it ranges between 0 and 1 instead of the range that it currently has. So let's say I want to look at the range of data. I'll say summary X, like so. And if I just run that, it'll give me a summary in the console that says minimum is 0, maximum is 7. So I want to rescale that from 0 to 1. So to do that, I have to write an expression with X. So I could say, for example, min X equals minimum of X, max X equals max of X. And these are two built-in functions. Now I'm just showing you summary, minimum, maximum. And min of X will find the minimum value in the vector and store it in a variable called min X. Max of X will find the maximum value, which we already know what it is. It's 7. It's easy to see as well. And it will store it in a max X variable. Then I can do a normalization. I'll just call that normalization n. I'll say that n is equal to parentheses divided by parentheses. This is just an expression. You don't have to know it right now or anything. Just again showing you kind of how to use the script window and the console together. So I'll say X minus max X over max x minus min x. And so I'll run those together. Then I'll look at n. And I'll say, okay, summary of n. Well, it goes from -1 to 0. I don't want that. So instead, I'll do x minus min x at the top. And I'll redo that, like so. Then I can look at n again. And it goes from 0 to 1, and I can do a summary of it, like so. So notice how I'm just kind of going between my script window for some things I'm doing directly in the console. It really depends on whether or not you want to have that, what you just did as a record, or you're just testing something quickly. So I just want to do a quick summary. I don't need to test it. I don't need to save it in my script window. I could if I wanted to. It doesn't hurt. You can do everything in your script window, save everything you write. That's okay. Now, if that was something I wanted to keep and provide an explanation of, let's say I want to standardize them both now, and I want to do the same for the y variable, well, I'd have to get, I'd say min y equals min y, and max y equals max y. And I'll just call this O equals parentheses divided by parentheses, because that's what we need for this particular expression. And I'll say y minus min y and max y minus min y, like so. So y minus the minimum over the range. Then I can run those. I can select them and just run those if I want with Control Enter on the keyboard. And I'll check again the summary of O and the summary of N, like so. So now they just both range between 0 and 1. So you'll see our old plot at the bottom here, the bottom right-hand corner. You see that's the old plot, and the axes on X went from 0 to 7 and Y from 0 to 0.9. Now when I replot it with N and O instead, so if I say plot, and I'll just do it here, plot N comma O instead of X comma Y, you'll see nothing's going to change except the axes values. See that? So now both axes range between 0 and 1. So we've rescaled both axes and rescaled the values. It doesn't change the relationship between any of the values. They're relatively all the same. That's just one example of a workflow. And when I have something like this, notice here that I'm repeating something. So I'm repeating that, and then I'm repeating it again to get the minimum values for y, and then doing the rescaling and everything. Whenever I'm repeating something in code many times, what I might do is create a function out of that. And you'll see functions in a later exercise, but I'll just kind of show you the idea of it right now. So I'll make a function, and I'll call it rescale, and that'll be equal to function, and that function will take in an x and a y, and then it has squiggly braces open and closed. Now in between those squiggly braces, I'm going to take this example here, since I use x and y in there already. I should say x. I use x in there and I send in x. I don't send in a y. So this function is rescaling it. It rescales one variable, and the variable here is x. That's the parameter for the function. And so this parameter is used inside the function. I'm going to rename that, just instead of from x to something like a vector. And then I have to paint in here a vector, just as if a vector is a list of numbers made with a concatenate function, a vector. So wherever I see X, I must change it to a vector. And it makes N, and then I'll say return N. So now I don't need this stuff anymore. So when I have a function like this, it takes the place of having to do that, type those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different expressions. So I can just bring that up there, and I'll take my function, I'll select it, and I'll run it. So I'll say Control Enter and that enters it into the space of what we see on the console. And now I can use it. So once that function is recognized and it's been put into the R console, I can use that rescale function. I can just say, okay, this time N equals rescale. And it needs a vector to be put in there, and I'll call that one X. And then I'll have to do I'll say O equals rescale Y. And now when I run these two, N and O, both range now again between 0 and 1. And if I plot them, you'll see there's no difference or no change at all to the plot. Plot N, comma O. It plotted it, nothing changed, so you don't see any change in the plot. And all this stuff, of course, is down here in my history. Everything that goes in the console goes in history. So even things that I might have typed only in the console, I can find them in the history. If I wanted to click on them, I could then bring them back into here by saying, select it in the history, and then say to source, and it puts it up there. So this is just, again, you don't have to understand all the things that I'm doing here, like with functions and stuff, because it's too early on for you to know what those are. But get the idea of the flow of how I'm working. I'm working in the console and in the script window, and even taking stuff from history to do things. So you can go back and forth. It's a very fluid way of working. Now, if I wanted to, for example, if this was the answer to some question, then I would put that in my R Markdown document. So let's say I create a new Markdown document, like so, and it will be type Word. And I'll give it a title, I don't know, my exercise, like so. And it creates, again, that default one. And I don't need anything in here past the first code chunk, because it's just example stuff, so I get rid of it. And then I'll say, okay, answers, and I'll put that as a big header. Number 1, create a function that rescales values between 0 and 1. So that if that was the question, I put the question there. And then I stick in a chunk, an R chunk. And then in the R chunk, I can just paste that function. Oh, Control Z. Well, actually over here, I'll go back to my copy it. So I'll put that function in there as the answer, like so. So there's the function, and then I say, after that I could say, here is an example of its usage. And then I put another chunk, so insert R chunk. Then I'll go back to my script window. I'll get X and Y, bring them over here, paste them in, and then go back to my script window again, and I'll use the example here of rescaling them, like that. And then I'll show a summary of each, show that they are correct. Summary N, summary O. And again, I can try them out here. I can run these parts of the chunks, run that one, then I can go and run this one. And it shows me the output both here and, of course, in my script window. And I could even say here is a plot of n, n, and O. And these two little formatting things I put here are just to the left of the number 1 key. It's shift and just to the left of that key. Or it's actually no shift, just the, I can't remember, I don't even know what they're called, but that's what's used to show that these are, it'll format them as our code within the text I'm writing here. And so I stick in another chunk, another R chunk there. I'll just say plot n comma O. And at that point, I could run everything in the document. So I could say, okay, let's run everything here. Or I could just run that last part. There's the plot. And then I could knit this. So I'll try to knit it. First, it asks me to save it. We'll just call it, my exercise. And there it goes. It will start to do the knitting and eventually open up a Word document that's formatted. There it is. It's open in Word right there. So there's my exercise. Gives the date and everything automatically. And there's my, question, create a function that rescales value 0 to 1. I see here's an example. There it is. It shows we have 0 to 1 rescaling after using that function. And a plot just to show, maybe it was required a plot to show the relationship between N and O, or X and Y as the rescale. So having that then usually kind of gives you the idea here that what I'm doing is I'm developing my R working script or working statements just in a regular script window, testing things out, and then the things that work the way I want them, I add them into chunks within a R Markdown document. So that kind of gives you an idea of the type of flow that you can use. Have a script window to do the building of expressions to make sure they work, modifying them, playing with them. It's quicker. And then once everything is good and working, you can start to put them together into R chunks as part of an answer, for example, to a question.